Welcome, my name is Michael Wickerson, and I am going to try and squeeze in a lecture I did today, the first of 4 lectures on the Rhino Training Manual Level 1 model, hoping to get to the Level 2 model as well to prepare some students for certification in Rhino, which I think is becoming ever increasingly more important in the sculpture field and possibly the visual arts, and certainly has taken precedence over in architecture. So 25 seconds in, what I did was I covered running through here pretty much the basics of dealing in part 1 with an introduction, the interface to Rhino, showing people how I like to set it up with the menu tools, actually I just brought the panels down on the side to just the layers tool, and I actually have a file here I've opened. I like to pair these over here as icons to do some basic work, and I do like to work in the top view. And if I had to preference these, I like to use the standard because I like zoom extends all. I like visibility. I like viewport layout because I like to reset it. Lately, I've been choosing the select tool to actually select objects I might use. Understanding C-planes is important, and I think the rest of it is pretty good. I probably will go back up to this tool, this bar, to get a lot of help up here. You might not have everything here, but I am working within Windows. Down here at the bottom, I've got my gumball set. We'll touch on recorded history because I want to push this to Grasshopper. Object snaps are on. I might have my grid snap on to start, and ortho I may put on, but I usually default it on with a shift. Down underneath here, which is kind of blocked, I've chosen my object snaps as near, point, actually I think just end, point, possibly mid. I like center, and we'll just start with that. So Rhino, I'm not going to jump too hard into the interface, but we want to deal with creating geometry, some precision modeling, and some editing of geometry through this half-an-hour session. I'm trying to condense a couple hours into a very short period. What is Rhino? It's basically a 3D modeling program. What I have here in this tool, if I just stretch this out, and I might have to just elongate this way, pull this back a little bit this way, you'll see that I have, and I can certainly shorten this. I have a couple things on layers already, which you don't have, but what I've done is taken the files and I've made the first set of exercise basics through introduction, viewport options, drawing lines, modeling aids, and precision modeling. And you can go in and open any one of those and it will open up, and then my files are already in the layers tool. Of course, you have to learn how to make new layers and how to actually set things to it, and we'll cover that a little bit as we go through this. But initially, I want to talk about the fact that Rhino is about surfaces, and here's where I'll go in and use my standard and go to zoom extends all to get everything centered and right in front. And I've actually made this, but initially I just want to talk about Rhino's ability to move and edit and surface edit. If you have a multitude of those things, or many of those things, you can start to make poly surfaces. And then with poly surfaces, I can actually go in and make a specific solid, and I've chosen 3 here. And those are the things you want to gain control of. I also mentioned that it's very important to have lightweight extrusions. I'm going to use a text example, polygons, ellipses, circles, and a square. Rectangle to start, and I use a simple extrusion of that. And then curves are another tool to get your head around not only flat planar tools on certain construction planes, but are you starting to learn how to use elevator mode with the toggle, with the control toggle to actually draw things up perspectively and work from multiple viewports to build things that might look a little simple to start, but they're great for taking images off of profiles and full frontals. I did put in some polygon meshes because some people really understand meshes from other programs like Blender, and there's a remeshing of a lot of these and reducing the mesh count and getting some nice objects. Keep in mind that you can control shift select edit a lot of these things and start doing some nice edits that you were used to maybe in other programs. I will turn that off, and then also Rhino 7, which I didn't have included here, another good reason to have zoom extend all. You have this wonderful in-between NURBS and mesh surface that you can use the subdivision tools. I'm coming back and working statically in Rhino here for 4 weeks so we can really introduce Grasshopper. So enough of that. The interface has its title bar up here, and I think I'll just turn off everything so we can relax a little bit. Take off our gumball, which I do like to click because that gumball tool is pretty amazing. And we have our title bar at the top, which we can use to use files, edit, view. Curve is how we're actually going to produce a lot of line work, and I'm going to work from here. But as you get better at it, you might realize you want to use the command line, which as you go down, you could type in curve, and you could end up having the exact same. I did a start of curve, exit your command line, right-click to repeat, and there's that start of curve again, exit that again, and I will go back in and type curve again. And I just want to show you that this starts to become very smart with how it remembers what you did before. Curve boolean, curve through polyline, curve through points, curve through surface control points, and there's basic curve tool. But up here, you can actually go in and learn how to make different types of lines, different types of polylines, rectangles, polygons, and freeform curves. When you find out the ones you really like using, I would recommend going over to these icons and getting in the habit of right and left clicking, or left clicking and pulling out these pop-ups that show all the methods. You have to hover to find the answer. But if you're a visual person like most visual artists, then you might end up like using those. Tab toolbars are down here, which are still nice, and I showed how to use those. And then the graphic area is included here, which you can jump right to perspective. You can right click on here and change it from rendered. You can move into ghosted. I like to keep it on shaded to start. Double click and it'll return it. And you also have an ability to edit all the stuff and really mess with it. And then you can always go back into what I said, the standard toolbar under, viewport layouts, and just do a zoom extends all. And it will bring back your, not a zoom extends all, it'll bring back your 4 panels. The standard is the one that if you have an object, it'll bring it back. Viewports you want to take a look at, obviously. Status bars down here to what's happening, what's been selected. That's grid snaps, ortho, planar, object snaps, smart track, gumball, recorded history, and filter. Really nice stuff to get your head around. And then the object snaps, if you're using object snaps, you're going to want to find out how to end up getting these. I believe if I hit shift and click here, it has a nice transfer over to, maybe it's control. There it is. Control will bring us into tangent from a long line. People don't know that there's a whole advanced set of object snaps, which are really nice to know where they are. I'm going to keep on center, point, and end. Sorry, it's coming up by this little counter. So we're 6 minutes in. Exercise 1 is pretty simple. You want to build something and you want to learn the basic skills of, we could go into this tool, but I think what I'll do is show you over here. You can go into Rhino at any time, click your help menu, go into Learn Rhino, Tutorials and Samples, and bring in this incredible toolbar which pops in all the exercises to learn the training manual. I fully expect everyone to do every one of these exercises and read through it, and I'll scale down what we've actually covered. It's a 3-day, 6-hour-a-day course if you want to get trained to do this, but you want to pass the test within 3 tries. And I basically covered in these first 7 minutes, not so much that schedule, but talking about the polylines. You'll see I'm being very repetitive. I'm matching this to a T, talking about the sections of the viewport and all the parts. And we're going to run this down to the first exercise that you actually start dealing with geometries. And they do show you how to build some curves and lines to start. You basically started, which I had in the past file. This is the one that I really like because you go in and you grab, I think, right here, you go in and grab Start 3DM File, which is down here. So if I take Start 3DM File, I could use the one that's defaulted here under Start 3DM and it would come up. Or you could go, if you follow my class, go to Open and just, we don't need to save that one. You can go into Exercise Viewport Options, not that one, Introduction, Rhino Basics, and there it is. And I think the panel is going to come up in perspective. I can make it 4-part. I can do my zoom extends all. And we have a nice render set, shaded set in here. We have over here, I'll just show you. You can quickly go and do a technical view of that. Over here, I might want a pen and ink view. And over here, I might want a artistic view just to make things a little more interesting. And you inevitably want to know how to use a 3-button mouse or 2-button mouse with a scroll in between to pan with the right click, to rotate and orbit the right click, to zoom in and out with the scroll key, and hold down shift and pan back and forth. And then over here, you actually can just use your right mouse key to move around left, right, center here and scroll in and out. And if you make it all messed up and you don't know where your forms are and you get lost in Rhino, there's many ways in here. I'll just show you basically View Tool. View Tool, I don't use this one very often. And let me see, Set View and Plan, and it'll reset that plan. But I find I'm stuck on standard views, zoom extends all, and everything's back. And this tool is basically about what would you do, and my perspective tool, I actually set this to, even though it's perspective, I've defaulted and I'm not getting my rotation anymore. So I'll have to come back in and probably grab my standard view, my lay port, go back to all 4, and I get that perspective back. And that can be tricky when you can't find it. So what I want to do is make this solid, and I'm not going to talk about object snaps, but I want you basically to learn how to basically use command lines move. You grab an object to move. You take an object, if the center clicks on, hit enter, follow the command line, go to the edge of the circle and it will reference the center point, and then come up here and try and find that center point. You can't locate it, without touching the edge of the circle, and it'll snap right to it if your object snaps are on. And there, we've done a very simple exercise that they encourage you to do. The other thing you can do is you can type in things like copy, because that's the second command. I think that's very important, this object. Hit enter, and we will point and move this one from there, holding down shift for an ortho to keep us in a certain direction. You might want to practice moving things in viewport, and we can copy it again and move it out this way. And we'll right click to end the code, and we've made a nice copy. Transformations, we can grab this one, and even though you can use the gumball if it's clicked, many things can happen here, scaling, moving. I want you to know the command line transform, and probably for that one, I'm actually going to go up to transform tool here and say, let's do a rotate 3D, this object from this point to this object, and we'll rotate it in this direction, and we will just change it so we can actually start modeling it. With a little bit of a shift tool, you can start to make things orthogonal. And this gets a little crazy when you're in the perspective window, because moves, jump, and transformations move differently. And that's why you might want to double click on here and do a lot of those transformations that might have been a lot easier, say in your right angle. So I can grab this whole thing again, and even though the gumball will start to move it, I might want to have a lot more control of that in the command line. There's always 100 ways to kill a cat. So Control Z will put it back in Rhino, and Control Y will move it forward. So you just sit around in this exercise and build a bunch of beautiful geometry. I'm not going to spend any more time on it as it shows you, and you're flying through here with object snaps, moving things, and build a little castle. The next exercise is one that I didn't show today, but if I went in and I said, okay, I'm going to open, and I'm not going to save that one, I'm going to show the view options. It's going to default to this camera view, which you're never going to be able to model right off the bat. And once again, zoom extends all 4 viewports, and then standard visibility, zoom extends all. You have everything here. It's saying in these ways, you can jump in here and select edit from left to right, just what's contained. And if you don't know what you're looking at, go over to wireframe and realize the complexity of this and how smooth and filleted and beautiful this form is. You don't have to be prepared to model this right away as a design, but it is nice to get your head around how would I select edit certain things as I'm rolling through and trying to find what I'm getting as a lens. Because certain objects in here are grouped, and that's how they're thinking about making them. And if you don't believe me, jump over into the layers tab, and you'll see you have lens, trim and details, you have the body, and then you have sub layers within here created by here to be trim and details, a flash switch, a bumper, and a screen. You can turn certain ones off to not look at them. And the other thing you can do is start to line these things up and make different views. And that's what that exercise is about. And it's certainly worth playing through and finding out how to organize. Then you're into creating geometry. And I think I've already done my first page. We're actually flying pretty nicely. Object snaps. And I wanted to show in creating geometry, what was the first exercise right here, that you're not actually bringing in anything. You're actually starting with a new file. So I'm not going to save that one. We're just going to open up a new file with small millimeters, and we're ready to start. And I really like this one because it comes up with 5 default layers, and as you make geometry, you want to bring it in. So this is a great one that says, let's create a line by line segments. Create one. And because it will default to the construction plane, I'm going to right-click and start another one, and the object snaps on. There's the next one. Right-click, do the next one, and right-click and do the next one. And then end that command by hitting Enter. And now look, when you select, you're only selecting what's there. It's not a joined polyline. There's separate lines that you can actually get access to. Remember your zoom extends all to pull everything in, so you can standard zoom extends all to see everything that you have there, even on the front and right, which is incredibly flat. Now remember, you can start manipulating things, but we'll get into that differently. Now what I would do in the top view is say that was a single line segment. Let's go back into curve and try something like a polyline. And a polyline is pretty nice because I can sit here and I can shape here, 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 here. And when I'm done that command and I select any one of these lines, I select the entire polyline. Now you can turn one of these polylines back into these line segments by using a very powerful tool over here, which is explode. And there you go. You've exploded it, and now you get line segments just like you had. And the reverse of that, which is a little tricky because now I want to select, hold down shift, this line, this line, this line, this line, and this line. I may want to go in and join those back together, and it'll tell me 5 joins back into one open curve. And now when I select it, I have it again. So just scrolling down and following these exercises, pretty simple, single lines, curves, and they go so far as to say, if these were lines, okay, if these were line segments, select them right to left if it touches on it. we can say, let's set these change objects layers to 1. And then the polyline, I could set over here to 2. And if I want to remember what I've done, I can call this one line segments, lines, and this one I can call just polylines. And what's nice about that is you can make it visible, make it non-visible, but if you make it visible and you lock it, you can't pick it up, you can't do anything with it. You can make it invisible, but you can't interact and move with it. So when you have a geometry you like, you might want to lock it down. So I'm just going to show you a couple examples of that. As it goes through, it says there's also some other wonderful freeform curves to apply, control points and interpolate points. And I like interpolate points because I can just blast out a bunch of points like that and close it off, and I have a really nice point that has control points on it. And those control points don't have to stay planar. I can go in and say, okay, control points are on. What happens when I start to move that line up, which was controlling that point, this point? And you realize that it is an incredible line-based editing tool, but also a surface-based editing tool. So we're going to go into here, and we're just going to call this, we're going to grab that object and set that to change object layer, and we're going to go into here and say interpolated curve. And I'll just use camel case, so whenever I type another word, I put a capital on there. That will help with coding later on. And there we go. And let's make that one invisible. You scroll down, modeling aids are amazing. They cover all the details of what's happening when you choose grid snap, ortho, and I should stretch this out so you can read it all. But I wanted to show one tool that I really like. And I'm not going to break this down quite yet, but it's just a little snippet of why you have an interest in Grasshopper if you're going to look at Rhino. And this is critical. Let's take something as simple as a interpolated curve. Let's put on our grid snap. Let's jump in here and start snapping and make that beautiful shape, that gorgeous heart, and end it. Now that object can be mirrored, but instead of just mirroring it across an axis line, I want to hit on recorded history, and this is where David Button went with Grasshopper, an incredible open source plugin that's amazing. We are going to, with recorded history on, we're going to type mirror, and this works with many commands, and it locks it in, objects to mirror, axis line from here to here, and now with control points on, I believe recorded history is still locked. I might have broken it because I didn't have it selected, but you'll see it updates on both sides. Incredibly powerful for you to think about, to have a parametric model that works one step back. And that's really the emphasis of why we're breaking this down. We're trying to, and you'll see how that separates if it's still mirroring off that line. When I exit that command, that's broken. And at this point, if I was to move any of these lines, at this point, you'll see, oh, it's still locked. That's nice. I'm still in it. Let me end that command, select objects. I'm going to exit out of that. And now if I went to this side and started controlling the surface edit, it's still updating. That's amazing. I thought maybe they did something different in the 7. I thought it broke. It probably will break if I take this section and say move, and move that object from this point over to here. And then it says the move broke the command, the history on one object. And at this point, if I grab this one and start to change the geometry, it only updates in that side. Okay, so nothing changed, nothing too strange. I just threw that in there because it's very exciting. You want to learn how to, obviously, I think the example they bring in, example 4, which is nice. Let's go over to that. Open, I think I called it delete 3DM. Let's just check it out. Drawing lines, modeling aids, let's see what I get. Oh, I just basically threw this up as some text to say you want to cover all of those wonderful modeling aids, and I put them in as text items just for fun. Grid snap, ortho, object snap, smart track, planar, gumball, recorded history, filter, and layers. And you can take a look at what those mean. What a wonderful way to filter what you want to look at. So if I erase that, and I'm filtering those off, not select, I'm not going to be able to select. So running over those things are very key to get your head around it. And if you're into really the details in the C-plane and the X and Y coordinates, that's all provided as well. I'm not actually going into file properties, which if you have time, you should sit. There's a few key ones here, modeling age, which I think is nice, and definitely tooltips for making distances in object snap. I think there's another great one up here under units to change your units to what you want within your model, metric or imperial, fractions or decimals. And tolerances can be set as well. Those are basically the only two that, well, not the only two, but the ones that I kind of play with to start. but you can run through each one of these and really find you have some really good control in the properties. And we have a fellow, Nathan, that works in our Fab Lab that really knows that stuff inside out. So keep moving. Layers are what I've kind of touched on again and again. If I wanted this layer, I'd have to click it and then have a sub layer to it, and it would put it in. And I could say, you know, sub layer to layer 1, which is pretty obvious, but that at least means that if I go back to the default here and I lock this off, I won't see the sub layer, but if I lock this off, I won't see the main layer, and I won't see any of the sub layers within it. So if you lock the main layer, it's like chapters in a book. If you close the book, you close the book, and you're not going to be able to read the other chapters. But there's a variety of things in here, changing colors, locking, making things within that set, the colors that you want without any render. It's just a really nice tool. Layers is to show you, if you have good directory management, you're going to have great management of your files, and you can have wonderful scripts made, fully comprehensible, fully comprehending what you were trying to do when you go back to it, and then you can also look into parametric modeling and scripting and coding after that. So there is a whole section on layers here. It's worth checking out, seeing what you can do within the Layers tab. There's a selecting object one that I really like, and we covered that a little bit. Like if I select here and it gets fully enclosed, it will select everything within it. But if I select only half of it, it's not going to grab the rest of that R. If I select this way, I'll get it here. And there's many other ways through this tool, which I really like, the select tool, that I can sit in and say, let's select everything. Let's unselect everything. Let's go in and select, this one's probably points. There's no points, so it's not grabbing it. And you just keep moving through and kind of read your information as you go. I also don't use that. I use select and wait and see all the things you can actually click. So select curve, boom, I grabbed all the curves. I work in the command line as much as I can because I'm trying to move as hard as I can better into Python and into C# and Visual Studio. So they also talk about deletion, selecting models, moving them around. They do it in a very flat way, and they cover those selection tools. I tried to cover a lot of this today. It was very hard to do in a couple of hours, and I'm just trying to get people on track. This is the section I'm most excited about. So I'm going to open Precision Modeling, and that's the one I kind of ended with today. And you can see I ended up making a pretty nice little structure here, the Vblock, that I actually categorized. I'm going to go back to my default and take the Vblock off. I also made a very bendy, wonderful little shape of these things. And then I also showed how to work with these squares to generate this by coordinates, to generate this one by, we'll go into top view, this will make more sense. How to make relative coordinates to build that one, how to build polar coordinates this way with angles, and how to use distant angle coordinates to make this. Pretty simple stuff to start, and then I ended with something that is actually more complex for people trying to model. It's very easy to make a rectangle. It's very hard to make a precise, exactly located diagonal because you're not using the grid snap so much on that one. So this is a wonderful breakdown to follow this exercise, and you'll learn, and I'll fall through a couple of these exercises just to start, and I'll show the basics. The one I wanted to get back to was the angle rotations. Type 4, that was pretty exciting. Type 4, 45 degrees and it'll default to it. I'm going to run through these without spending too much time on here, and you want to take all these scripts and learn how to make these objects all the way through to that Vblock. We're going to start the next class when I get back together. What did I miss out here? Oh, those were the object snaps. We're going to go into object snaps when we're done. So let's end with this kind of version of what's here, and I'll show how we actually made everything worked up to it. So I'm going to take everything off and say, how can we start building geometries? The reason I'm saying this is doing surface edits and solid edits is crazy. It's going to weigh heavy. It's going to slow your computer. It's very heavy in Grasshopper. But if you can do all of your edits within a kind of curve sensibility and then lightweight extrusions, you're going to have a very fast script, and you're going to understand your work and work more historically like somebody on a blueprint. So if we go in here and we say nice and simple, curve, polyline, boom. It says, where do you want to start? When you type 0, you're actually typing 0, comma, 0 in the Y and 0 in the Z. And it starts you there. It says, where do we go now? And you can actually type 5 as the distance. And it defaults to that no matter where you put it. And you can actually draw this off in this direction with Shift, and it will snap to ortho, depending on where it is. And it snaps up to 90 degrees because that's the default. And I will throw in, we'll just do that. And then I'll say, give me another 5 limit, But we have to be careful with this. This one's coming off of here. That's the limit. Ortho up in the vertical. And we snap there. 5, enter, over this way, shift. And you can go up here and say close. And you have that first shape and you're done. Now, when we go into it again and say, let's use a reference point of curves, polyline, polyline, I'm going to start and say I want it to start at 8, 0. And then I want to add 5, but I want to add 5 to where I am. So I can do 5 here and move it here, and it will snap. I can do 5 here and move it here and snap. I have to wonder if yeah, it snapped. 5 here and snap, but I don't want to actually do that. I'm going to come back a little bit, erase this curve, and say, let's do it again with curves, polyline, polyline, 8, 0, R, reference, 5 in the X, 0 in the Y, reference, 0 in the X, 5 in the Y, enter, reference R, -5, 0 in the Y, end, and then close the form. And that's a way to build by reference. Let's do something a little fancier, and let's go to poly surface. I spent a little time on this. I know it's a little dry, but I also think it's very important for those who want to accurately model. Get your polyline going. Let's start at 0, 8, and this time I want to draw it out here in 5, and I could just do 5 distance. I don't have to use the relation shift there. But now I want to go up 5, enter, shift, and now I want to go down to this point. And one way I could do that is actually 5 squared plus 5 squared, and the square root of that is going to be the actual distance to here. So the fastest way to get the diagonal would be that. But I want to show you an interesting technique of saying I want to go in the negative, because I know a 1 by 1 triangle is going to have a 45-degree angle as a right angle. I just know that mass. I'm going to put in less than sign, which actually means angle in this case, 45 degrees. It defaults to snapping at 45 degrees when I do that. And now you can see the certain lengths. So if I said I wanted length 8, it's going to reach beyond that point, and it's going to end there, and I'm going to stop my move and be done. But at this point, I've made the triangle without actually knowing the distance from here to here, which I could definitely find out, and that will give you technically the distance that just came out by that line. If I measured that, is 7.071, and that's rounded, but that actually is the square root of 25 plus 25, or 50 squared, the square root of 50, just if you're into Pythagorean theorem. Didn't mean to throw you off with that, but I'd love to get a little math in here. When I'm done, I can select all, and I could use this trim tool, and I could just trim off that end, and I'm done. So I did a little bit of angle reference with that as well, which I thought was nice. The other thing to do within this structure is let's take, let's leave the command if you're ever stuck in a command line. Let's go to curve, polyline, polylines, and I will start at -8 and 0. And I like that little tool. I think I started there. Hang on a second. What did I do? Well, I'll just start here. And say I said I wanted to go 4 as a distance less than 30. And I really taught people today that that means I just went 4, and I didn't mean to end it, actually. Sorry, I got a little carried away there. Let me do my curve, polyline, start. Started the polyline here. I won't make it so big, but let me think to say angle, shift angle 30 degrees. It starts at 3 o'clock on the clock over here, and if I hit enter, that's going to rotate 30 degrees at a time counterclockwise. And think of that as the angle theta as you go from 0 to 30 to 60 to 90 to 180 to 270 and back to 360. That's how you have to think of how you're building angles with this tool. The other exercise, I can't really remember what it was, but with this skill set of what you've gathered, and I get rid of all that, I think we could basically start to build some interesting things like this, which are pretty interesting geometries, shaded. And if I go into perspective view, you can see I've actually built those. but I haven't tried to sculpt those from solid and bend those from solids. And there's a great exercise in here, but I'm going to actually leave it to you to go up and read this and learn how to follow through and make those shapes. I just want to end with this Vblock because the video is getting a little long. I will go back to my top view, and I should be able to map out what is happening here from this diagram. And for those that really want to have an engineering accurate product design, like architectural, sculptural, blueprint type style, I'm going to start basically here and try and gather all my information and build this all the way back to here. And here's how I would do it. Curve, polyline, line. Start at 0. Go 16 in the X direction, 0 in the Y. Let's see how big this is going to be. I like having these nice little decimals up here because I don't want to have to calculate it. Just leave this off in this direction. I now want to go, if you look at it, 120 degrees this way would actually be 60 degrees this way. And you just have to do the math, and you might need to, but what I will do is 60 degrees up. I will say I want 8 unit distance entered at 60 degrees up. And there you go. Your next line is there. Hit enter. Now it's quite simple. You just have to add 40 to it. So we will type reference the point 40, comma 0, enter. And now we're going to come down negative 60 degrees, or we can go all the way around to 300 degrees. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to take another 8 unit because they already gave it to me over here. I know it's 8 units, and I'm going to type in angle negative 60 degrees. And I'm a radian type person, so you can indicate that's the part, but I don't mind working in degrees when I'm building models like this. The next point you need, you can try and measure and get this to snap to 16, which is right there, and you'd have it. But I don't want to do it that way. I want to type reference 16 in the X, comma 0. And the reason I'm doing this is because it actually does make more sense farther down. You don't need the ortho. You're actually engineering this drawing and pulling it together. So you can see over here we're going to go up 40. So I'm going to type reference 40. If you don't type reference, it's going to build it back at the 0 point. Reference 40, at least I believe it is. And then I'll snap to the ortho with a shift up here. But I have to hit enter so it only goes to 40 in length. And I think it will. Next polyline in this direction. But I don't see it snapping to 40, so I'm going to type my 40 distance now. Yeah, there we go. It's set. And there we go. And then I'm going to pull in 8. And I'm not going to use my reference. I'm actually going to use my shift, come in 8. It's just quicker this way, and you start to speed up what you're doing. 8. Pull that back over here. And then I'm going to come up another 40, and this time I'm going to use reference 40. I'm sorry, reference 0, comma 40. There you go. And now I will go negative 8, reference negative 8, comma 0. And this is interesting because we're pulling it down at a 45-degree angle, and we are going to reference. Actually, I don't think we need the reference. We can just say comma, angle, shift, less than sign, 45 degrees, enter. And that's going to snap to 45 degrees, and we want that distance to be 36.77 because they gave it to us in the drawing. Now I can do down 8. Oops. I have to end that line. I think I messed up. If you mess up, just try right-clicking back out of the command, and you might have to select Edit, Control-Shift. You don't want to start again if you get this far in. Delete that and start another polyline, keeping in mind that you will have to join this afterwards. So I'm going to take this one in an angle of 45 degrees, and that's going to snap to 45 degrees, and I want that in a length of 36.77, enter. There we go. And now I want to get out of my 45-degree angle, but I think I can just come down on my 8, holding shift, 8, enter, hold shift. I believe the next one's 12 across. You can see from here, 12, it's an outer marking. And you will get into annotation as well. 12, enter, shift. You will type in 8, enter, shift up. And then we have the same line here. It would have been smart to do half this project and mirror it, but I'm just going to continue with what we're doing. We are doing a 45-degree angle and snapping to it. And we want that distance again to be 36.77. Enter. Enter again, so I make sure I get it. And I'm going to take my, I could go reference, -8, 0. And now I can do my reference 0, -40. And I think I'll just speed this up with 8, enter, shift, ortho, 8, enter, shift, ortho, 8, enter, shift, ortho. And I could close the form, or I could just do it this way and right-click to exit. Now we've made a form that's actually 2 lines. It's actually, if you look at it, it's got 2 curves. So we will want to throw a joint on there into one closed curve. As soon as you're done that, you can find other ways as a planar surface to make a planar surface from curves. Let's go into here and see what we have a choice of. This is certain curves. I could actually use a multitude of ways. Planar curves. I've made a solid. I didn't have to use the patch tool. Go back into here. And I think what I'll do is actually rotate this. I'll just do something a little interesting. I'm going to rotate 3D, even though it's not 3D. I'm going to rotate this one from here to here and try to lift that up in this direction, ortho. And that should allow me to move that a full 90 degrees and lift it up. And of course I grab the curve, not the object, so I'll get rid of the surface, and at this point I'll take this one, and it might be nice to grab the gumball, this object, but because I'm not rotating it from center, it probably wouldn't matter if I did. I could roll it, hold shift, and get it to set there. Now I can grab this object, and there's shortcuts, dragging this arrow, hitting Control, tapping Alt, you've now extruded it in this direction. And at that point, you have 2 planar ends. There's a wonderful command line I want you to get into, which is cap. And there you go. You should have capped both sides when I did that, I believe. And that is, you click it all, one closed poly surface, but in case you didn't catch it, what? That is a poly surface, a valley poly surface, and ready to go to a V-groove to be manufactured and turned into something. I can go back and I can show you that back in this version, back to here, is a great time to jump in and use some curve edit tools instead of trying to fill it later. So I'm going to go in here and pull up my pop-up, do my fillet tool, and say, I really want to take some time to fill it. Hang on a second. Let me exit. You have to explode this to actually fill it, but let's fill it. This line to this line, you see that nice little angle there. I could do the same thing if I wanted to soften the V-groove here. Let's hit my fillet command first, not just click it. There we go. I got a nice little soft fillet there. And I might do the same up on this corner. Right click for the command to start, fillet, right click for this command copy, and we've done another light fillet. And that's just going to make a nice smoother top when I exit that. But before I extrude, make sure I join it back together, and we'll push that back in a little ways, Control Alt, and we've got a nice little one that I can go back in and cap. So you're seeing a lot of commands that I'm starting to use, and I think we're set. Oh, why didn't I cap? Let me try it again. Cap. Unable to cap one object. The opening did not close. Planar loops of edge. What did I do wrong? How embarrassing. This object, I'm going to take that whole thing and group it. 2 joined into one closed curve. I might have actually selected another object. Let me try the cap again. Unable to cap. Give me 1 second. Something when I did the fillet, or I didn't get it when I closed it, but you'll notice this is not closed. I did not get that little bend in here, that fillet, and I wasn't able to pull that. So I might do something that's pretty interesting. I could try and take that object over here. This is kind of interesting to try and resolve it and cap it, but I actually think I'm going to do something a little fun and tricky here, which is a subtlety. I'm just going to draw a line between this point and this point, and I'm actually going to take this curve if I can get it, if I can explode that one into that little fillet tool right there, and this curve, selecting both, I actually want to do a sweep to rail. So select sweep shapes, this shape and this shape, and I should be able to sweep it along those rails. Let me see if I can do it. Select first rail, second rail, command. Let's try it again. Select first rail, second rail, select sweep shapes, and let's see if we get lucky. There we go. It looks good. And I've closed it now. So it's a little subtlety. It can take a little fanciness, but you really have to watch your forms, and that's an awkward thing that this is a chamfer and that's a fillet, but it's a subtlety that makes this mine. Let me select it all and group it, and let me try that cap again. Sometimes you just get a little funky, and there you go. You've got a nice object. And if I click that and I see I have one closed polyhurst section, now I can start using one other command I really like, which is just shell. And I'm going to shell that, removing this face, and leave it by thickness 1. It's going to think, and look what I just created. The resulting shell is not a solid, and there must be some little problem. Well, there must be some problem within here as to where that's not behaving as a solid, but it's pretty sweet. The shell is not a solid. Something must be open with one of these little subtle things that I did that I missed out on. There might be something, and you'll have to take it through a bunch of wonderful tools. One of the tools that's wonderful, good to use is a surface. Let's say zebra map. Let's select that and collect it and see what actually is going wrong within that. See if we can find that problem as a surface. Looks okay on that side. Looks okay on the bottom. Looks okay over here. I'm not finding the problem, but maybe there's something right in there somehow. There's something happening on this surface that it didn't read. Hard to say for sure if there's a little fudging there, and I might want to try another surface analysis to figure it out. But I'll leave that up to you because you're building things from linear drawings, doing your edits in line, and then taking it to solids. 41 minutes. That's the first few chapters of the training guide. I would suggest if you're interested in getting certified, I do know some people that have certification skills, and I'd like to get it myself. But we've flown through and actually done quite a bit of this through the modeling to the precision modeling as we go through. And if you take a look back to the full schedule that they'll do for 3 days, sorry, I'm jumping around here a little bit. Let's go back to the training manual and see that schedule once I find out where it was. Past the table of contents. Into here, I think here it is. What was probably the best way to see it would be how many chapters were in that. And now I'm just losing my mind a little bit. I'm going to move my picture because it's in the way and blocking what I'm trying to take a look at. If we take a look and say we moved out all the way to right here, point editing, editing geometry, and 3D modeling and editing. We haven't got to the rubber ducky. We want to get into the raise, the move, fillet, edit geometry, but we definitely have thrown through here and gotten through chapter 4 in precision modeling. So going through 1, 2, 3, 4, you've got an idea of it. We'll go into 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we'll through 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We should be done that first section, and we'll go on the training 2 guide. If you jump back into here on the help menu, you could jump into Learn Rhino, samples and tutorials. I've already have it here set up, but I can go back from level 2 into level 2 and take it farther into where I want to go for certification. So I hope that helps. I'm excited to work statically in Rhino, only enough for the first month so we can start to realize the power of going into Grasshopper. And I want you to think hard about that, record history and what was happening. So there's our course today in a nutshell in 43 minutes. I hope you enjoyed it if you're in the class. I hope the people studying at MGSM under Ahmed Hassab do wonders in this and learn a ton more from him and be ready to hit Grasshopper running when we're done. Very excited about this, and I'll add this to all my online forums and see where it goes. Thanks again for watching.